I'm excited to be here. I'm sorry that I'm not actually in the UK right now, although in February I'm going to be in the area. But so excited to be here in my home office in Provo, Utah, and being able to talk to you a little bit about some of the basics of Nu Skin and its nutrition arm, which is called Pharmanex. I'm hoping that there are a lot of people here joining us tonight that don't know much about us, because I really want to sort of give some of the basics of what we've been doing at Nu Skin for the last 30 or so years. And I've been with this company for 20 years, so just really love working here and want to share with you some of the great things that we're doing. So a little bit about my background. As you can probably tell, I'm not quite English. My ancestors left that side of the world sort of in the late 1700s to go to Australia. I'm Australian and studied there on the East Coast at the Australian National University. At the Australian National University, I studied biochemistry and chemistry, and then finally did my PhD in the area of cell biology and immunology. And in that, it was that area of study that really sort of started my path toward Nu Skin, actually, because I was very interested in autoimmune disease, autoimmunity, and I studied those conditions, and I became very interested in natural plant compounds. The reason, if you're not sure about the relationship, generally most of the drugs that we have that treat various diseases come from nature, from the plants. One of the first that I can think back to, well, not literally, but understanding the history, is aspirin. And so at the time in England, these things like arthritis and rheumatism were associated with cold and damp. And they had an interesting concept of herbology in those days, and that was that if it's a disease associated with something, then you go to that place to get the plant. And it turns out that cold and damp means the willow tree. And they went to the willow bark, and they found actually an active substance in the willow bark, salicylic acid, which is a really well-known ingredient that the Germans then got a hold of. And the Germans are also very good chemists, right? And they're all about here's the natural plant compound. How do we make this more bioavailable and more active? And so they added certain chemical components to the salicylic acid and made something called acetyl salicylic acid, or ASA, or otherwise known as aspirin, right? So that's kind of how a lot of our today's drugs to treat disease came from. Well, I have always been more interested in the prevention side, on the health side. And I'm fascinated by this idea that you can get natural plant compounds from the foods that we eat. And don't wait until we're sick. Just make sure that we're getting enough of the good, healthy plants and lifestyle issues so that we can stay on the healthy side of the equation. So I studied a lot of natural type compounds in these models that I had. And that ended up taking me to the National Cancer Institute in Washington, D.C. That's what brought me over to America. And I was using basically different models to study really the same concept. These naturally occurring components that you find in plants that aren't necessarily on the list of vitamins and minerals that the World Health Organization would publish. Nevertheless, a diet rich in fruits and vegetables will provide some of these compounds, and they have biological activity. So that's really what took me to Nu Skin about 20 years ago, because here was a company that was interested. They already had vitamin and mineral supplements, but they became very interested in these plant nutrients, and I was very keen to help them out, and that's really where I started with Nu Skin. So that's a little bit about my background. What do I do now? Well, I've sort of been here for 20 years and had all sorts of hats on, but now I'm the Vice President of Research and Development, so I report to the Chief Scientific Officer of this company. This is no ordinary company. Again, we're not a drug company, we're a health and wellness company. But we have a lot of scientists in the company, about 75 to 100 scientists altogether. About 30 of those are PhD scientists. We have here in Provo, Utah, a beautiful place. It's a little snowy right now. It's kind of cold. We have about half of our scientists here. We have a research team where the PhD scientists in that team are looking at ideation, new ideas, looking at, we have in that team PhD nutritionists and sports nutritionists and the like that get together and think, what are the latest areas of health and wellness, ingredients, how can we help? They put together formulations that then our development team will sort of work out the best dosage form. We have the majority of our scientists probably are chemists. And those chemists are doing methods development and quality control and making sure that all of those raw ingredients, what's in those actives. And in the finished product, do we have what we say is in there? There are no impurities and is it all of the good stuff and none of the bad stuff? So it takes a lot of science to run a company that is not just sort of me too and copying others, but actually on the frontier of science and trying to make sure that we have products that are efficacious and safe and have high quality that are the same from batch to batch to batch. We also have a sister facility in Shanghai, China. And in fact, I have excused myself from meetings today with those Chinese scientists that are over here, that are meeting with our scientists here, because we collaborate very strongly with them. And in fact, a lot of our pipeline of ideas comes from traditional Chinese medicine, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. So that's me, that's the company. About 35 years ago, this company began, and it was purely about skin. It was a personal care product company, and it was founded on a very basic principle that differentiated them from all other companies at the time, and that was that there are marvelous active ingredients for the skin. Ingredients that help with the hydration of the skin, ingredients that help with the structure and function of the skin and help you to look great. When you look great, you feel great. And the basic foundational concept was that while some of these actives are really good, a lot of them are not necessarily easily soluble. So we use very small amounts of these active ingredients for the skin in a vehicle that is often not all that skin friendly. Things like petroleum-based products or ethanol-based products. And so the founders of the company had a goal to try to produce a product that was all of the good and none of the bad. This proved to be extremely difficult at the time, back in the early 80s. Not too many companies, in fact, no companies were doing that. When they finally were able to sort of crack this code and make these products, people immediately felt the difference. They loved them. They could feel the difference on their skin. They could see the difference. And this company just exploded from there. Just went crazy. So there are all sorts of interesting stories about how the product was so popular we didn't even have jars to contain them. People had to bring their own jars and fill them with a spoon. A lot of complaints about us not being able to meet the demand. Those days sort of passed us, but they led to an interesting place. And that's where nutrition comes in. There were some people, small minority, but some people who had these wonderful personal care products, and actually it didn't help them all that much. They still had sort of unhealthy nails, their skin still was not great, their hair was not shiny and healthy, and the founders of the company were very astute and came to the conclusion after much study that sometimes if you're marginally deficient in some of the basic nutrients, then your body is not able to function optimally. And everything about the body really is reflected in the skin. It's really a major reflection of the health of the body. So they actually came up with a product at the time that just fed those basic nutritional elements that were to do with healthy hair, nails, and skin, with maybe a little less imagination than is customary from our founders. They came up with the name Image HNS, meaning hair, nails, and skin. But it was a breakthrough product at the time. I don't know if you realize that there are companies these days that have coined this term cosmeceutical, that is around this brand new concept that beauty is not just about the products you put on the skin, but about products that you take inside that help you to be healthy. So I'm glad they think they invented that, but we were already there some 30 years ago. But it did lead to an explosion in this nutrition side. And very soon, this company that was formed as a result, it was originally called Interior Design Nutritionals. Some of you, like Lena and Carla, probably remember this. But it's a great idea, isn't it? Interior design. It was all about how we look, but from the inside out. So a great deal of products were then made, a lot of really new concepts. One was, our original, most comprehensive vitamin mineral product was called Life Pack. And this was a very unique concept, putting it in a sachet that you would take twice a day. And you can see it's quite comprehensive, a lot of capsules or tablets or whatever in here. This is the US version. The version in the UK and other areas may be slightly different according to local regulations. It may be a tablet, it may contain fewer or greater amounts of various of the elements of it, but the basic concept is there. And this was a new idea. Instead of having to go into a vitamin shop and getting all of the separate nutrients in a dozen or so different bottles, our scientists have done all the work where we've got the right levels of the different vitamins, the different minerals, and the phytonutrients, which I'll talk about later. So we really became good at what we do. We had all sorts of targeted health products. You may have seen the video that I did recently on the bone formula that we're releasing into Europe. So really quite a great portfolio of products. But I want to get back to a little bit of the basics, because at some point we realized that we weren't just talking about sort of targeted health products. We weren't just talking about vitamins and minerals, but there's an umbrella that really captures all of this. And that umbrella is really to do with aging well. I have this motto: I want to die young, as late in life as possible. And I think that kind of sums it up, that it's about not living to 120, but rather just being healthy all the days of your life. And so this is this healthy aging concept. And I believe that there are three areas that kind of a natural progression of where we've been at Nu Skin and how we view this aging sort of paradigm. And it starts here with what I would call nutrition science. Excuse the writing, it's a little awkward there, the position of the board where you can actually see it. But so this circle, sort of under the umbrella of healthy aging, starts with nutrition. So nutrition really is a fundamental and a foundation of healthy aging. Now, why do I say that? I was just recently, just before I got on the phone with you, talking with a big group in France. And they were very proud of their Napoleon, I think they are. And their surgeon, can't remember his name, came up with this concept called triage. Those of you who are in the medical profession are probably familiar with this term. Triage is dividing into three. Especially in wartime, it's kind of associated with war, but it really can be in any medical situation. When the number of casualties overwhelms the resources that are available, then they have to go into what's called a triage mode, where you determine the severity of the wound or the problem, and you categorize it into three groups, right? Those that are so serious that we could spend a lot of resources trying to help them, and the percent of success would be very low. That's a very unfortunate situation, but in that situation, those people had to be left aside. Then you have two more groups, one where the wounds or the injuries or the condition is not so severe that it can wait, and those where it cannot wait must be treated right now. And believe it or not, your body actually does this triage. So let me give you an example. If you don't get enough calcium, if you're marginally deficient, maybe you're getting some, but you're not getting all that your body needs, where are you going to see the issue turn up? And I've asked this question to a lot of people, and almost invariably people answer the question, you'll see it in your bones. Eventually, maybe you'll lose bone density. And that's quite right. It's interesting that it doesn't go a different direction. And it doesn't go a different direction because of your body's own triage system. And this was actually brought up by this is not my idea. This is a concept that's brought up by a very famous scientist by the name of Bruce Ames. You may have heard of him. Bruce Ames is famous for a test that he does on mutagenicity called the Ames test. But Bruce Ames became very interested in later life, he's in his 70s or 80s now, on preserving the genome, on protecting the genes of the body so that there's less mutation. So it's gone from bacteria to humans now. And he has shown in a series of very systematic studies that there is what's called now a micronutrient triage. What we mean by that is when micronutrients are in short supply, or if you're marginally deficient, so you're getting some calcium but not quite enough, then the body makes a decision what to do with that nutrient. It's got dozens of systems of the body that it needs to send it to, not just the bones, and it makes a decision to send it to those systems of the body that are absolutely essential for your day-to-day functioning. So many people don't realize actually that the calcium ions are actually very important for neuromuscular sort of activities of the body. You can't move a muscle without calcium ions. You can't think and do all of that neurological processing without calcium ions. So imagine if the body got it wrong and there was no such thing as triage. You might be trying to cross a busy street in London and suddenly your body will freeze up. Either you'll get confused because your brain's not thinking, or your muscles can't work anymore. That would be an absurd situation. So in actual fact, if you're short of calcium, your body does the triage. Thankfully, you get to stay alive today because those important systems keep working. It will be at the expense of how well you age. Do you agree? Because if it does affect your bone density, you won't really notice the problem until much later. So the body puts it off. Your body is just so smart that way. And I'd much rather be sort of alive today to be able to escape, dodge the bus, than, dead today but with really strong bones. You get the picture? So for every nutrient, it's actually the same story. And Bruce Ames has gone through a very systematic analysis of this, whether it's vitamin C or calcium or iron or any of the other multitude of nutrients. We need to make sure that we are not marginally deficient in any of those nutrients. Otherwise, you won't age well. So that's why the foundation then becomes this circle of nutrition. So the next circle, what's another area of aging that we consider from the science to be very important? And this is one that sort of arose later, more around the 90s and late 80s. This is the area where I cut my teeth in science too, was about, I studied vitamin E and its effects on cardiovascular health. So the second circle then in this Venn diagram would be I'm going to just put AO for antioxidant science. This is an important area, and there are lots of, there's some very basic theories, and, almost all of the conditions of aging are associated with how well our body deals with free radicals. So free radicals are these unstable chemical entities that can attack the membranes of the body, the DNA of the body, and affect the way that the cell health. And the cell has to be able to deal with this. And there's DNA repair mechanisms. There's all sorts of stuff going in the body where the body sort of reacts to the damage caused by free radical molecules, which occur from pollution, but they're also from the inside, just pure metabolism and generation of energy, which consumes oxygen and fuel, generates a metabolic exhaust of free radicals that your body has to deal with. So we have enzymes that deal with that. And interestingly, those enzymes that mop up the free radicals, just imagine a little Pac-Man, they actually have, as a very important component of those enzymes, some of these metals that we find. So zinc, manganese, selenium, these are cofactors, or the teeth in these little Pac-Men that fight free radicals. So again, marginally deficient in any of these basic elements can affect the way that our body fights. And so repair is going on, and we're fighting against these free radicals. But interestingly, there are a lot of antioxidants, these components that fight free radicals, that must come from our diet. And they usually come from a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables, because many of these antioxidants have color. And that's an area that is something that we've focused on, obviously, since the 90s. And our most comprehensive products actually are full of some of these antioxidants, like vitamin E, vitamin C, and again, these colors that are found in nature. You can probably think of some. What is the orange color from a carrot? We know that it's beta-carotene, right? Named after the carrot. So it's important to get plenty of beta-carotene, a very potent antioxidant. There are other colors found in nature that are also important, that have a similar structure. So the red that we find from tomatoes or watermelons, those are Lycopene, it's another carotenoid, a little bit like beta-carotene, but slightly different. Also very good first line of defense against free radicals. There's yellow that you would find in corn or egg yolks. Okay, that's also an important carotenoid. So we have it in our, it's important to get enough from our vitamin mineral type products, but also we create other things to make life a little easier for you. This product is called JV. I don't know if you've seen this before, but as the label suggests here, it's rich in sort of concentrates of carrots, tomatoes, things like that, in a little bit of an oily base, which actually helps with the bioavailability. And so I'm going to have a little sip right now because I can't resist. But these carotenoids that just went into my body first go into my tummy, and then those are absorbed into my bloodstream. And eventually, that blood in the microcirculation comes into contact with the microcirculation at the base of the skin. And after a few weeks, then actually makes its way to the stratum corneum, which is the outer layer of the skin. And if you eat enough carotenoids, you'll actually get sort of an orange pigment to your skin. I don't know if you quite see it. I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, and so I have a little bit of an orange tinge to my skin. Actually, people tell me it makes me look healthy. We came across a technology in 1999 that was being developed at the University of Utah, just up the road here, at their Division of Biooptics, so sort of a part of their physics lab, where scientists there were experimenting with a type of spectroscopy called Raman spectroscopy. So this is where you use a narrow bandwidth of light and it excites certain molecules and causes a shift in the frequency. And in this case, they were looking at carotenoids. And they were looking at carotenoids in skin and found that light in the blue spectrum of exactly or very close to around 472 or 73 nanometers. So that's the narrow bandwidth of light over in the blue side, the opposite to the red side, actually interacts with these carotenoid molecules, causes them to vibrate, and then let off green light reflected back. And you can measure the concentration of that green light, and voila, you have a measurement of the carotenoids. So this is something that was developed at the University of Utah in this huge room with a laser that was 4 feet long, an argon laser. You had to pour liquid nitrogen into the laser to cool it down enough, and then you put your hand on the end, and soon enough it gave you a reading of carotenoids. Now, why were we interested in that? There are lots of antioxidants found in nature. And the first question we had to ask ourselves is, are we interested in this technology that they've developed? It's kind of cool. It uses light. It's kind of like something out of Star Trek, like a tricorder, beep, 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 right? Where you're using light to measure a molecule that's found in the skin. It's a nutritionally relevant molecule. But how relevant is it? I mean, it's just carotenoids. There are other antioxidants too, like I mentioned, vitamin C, vitamin E, and the flavonoids, and all sorts of things that you've never heard of. And so, just to be able to measure carotenoids, is that enough? Sure enough, we contacted the world expert in this area of carotenoids. His name is Lester Packer. And he's been one of my heroes since I was quite a young scientist. Really came up with this whole concept of free radical biology and how it affects human nutrition. And he got back to us and has since joined our scientific advisory board, because he realized the importance of carotenoids. And he said, yes, if you can measure carotenoids non-invasively, that will really change things. Because the only other way to measure it today is either to take a skin sample, which nobody wants to donate, or take a blood sample, which is also unpleasant, and do a whole bunch of tests with sophisticated laboratory equipment. And it's expensive, and it's not a run-of-the-mill test. And boy, yeah, if you can do that with light, that's amazing. And what else is really important, as he pointed out to us, is that carotenoids are like a first line of defense antioxidant. That means that if those levels are high, then it means your body is doing well in its fight against free radicals. That means that the other antioxidants in the body will also be high. This has subsequently been shown in several published studies that are in the scientific and medical literature. So obviously it was worth going after. What we did then was, first attempt was to shrink this technology into something that we could fit into the average person's living room and make it simple enough for you to use. And so several have been developed over the years, but this was really our first attempt right here. This is the first Pharmanex biophotonic scanner. A laser here, so you can see the little warning. I don't know if you can see that warning sign there. Warning, laser. Put your hand there, and it's non-invasive, guaranteed. You won't smell like bacon after you put your hand in front of the laser there. And after a minute and a half, it gives you a reading that tells you what your carotenoid levels are. And it's important to know that because it's telling you several things. One, that you're getting enough of these antioxidants from your diet. Lots of fruits and vegetables. If you don't eat lots of fruits and vegetables, you're not going to score high. The other thing is that there are some things that destroy those antioxidants. So smoking is a no-no. Every cigarette has 10 quadrillion free radicals. You will age faster if you smoke. You can see it in the skin around your mouth and your face, but it also affects every cell of the body. And you will see it on the scanner. Smokers invariably score much lower than those that don't. So if you smoke, please try to give it up. The next thing is if you're overweight, that does seem to affect your scanner score. And if you're stressed out a lot, that will affect your scanner score. So some different mechanisms that are involved there. But the bottom line is, all of the things that the doctor wants to know about you are right there. Are you getting enough fruits and vegetables? Are you not smoking? Are you controlling your body weight? Are you trying to keep your stress levels low? These are wonderful health markers. We, over the years, then developed, newer and better and sleeker versions. So now we are using, this is the latest version of the biophotonic scanner. You can see here, we're actually using a LED light now that has narrow bandwidth filters. So none of the danger of the laser, but all of the benefits of Raman spectroscopy. Now in 30 seconds, it will give you your biophotonic scanner score. Now, this is really important because I don't know how many of you are parents and how you motivate your children to eat a healthy diet. But it seems like even as adults, we don't change very much, right? I know in the UK you have almost as much issue as we do here in the United States with people just not eating a healthy diet, not getting enough fruits and vegetables. If you can measure something and get a number, that starts a whole new sort of a paradigm in your head. What if I get this scanner score and oops, it's low? Well, usually that creates an emotional response. And then over time, if you can change a lifestyle, a habit, eat more fruits and vegetables, take some products that might help, cheers, then after a few weeks, if you see that score going up, you say, I'm on the right track here. And then you start asking questions like, well, what do the healthiest people in the world look like in terms of their scanner score? What about the vegetarians? Where are they? I want to be more like that. You don't necessarily have to go vegetarian, full bore or vegan, but we've got something to aim for now and something that helps us to stay healthy. And of course, if we're smoking and we give that up and we see a change, that's a motivator to keep going. So we love this concept, not only of helping people to understand the right kinds of plant nutrients, but getting enough of them, and now to be able to measure them and measure a change. So you're seeing a lot of stuff on social media in the UK right now. I'm seeing amazing things come out of the UK. A lot of the really sexy stuff is skin, right? You can put lipstick on and see the difference in social media. We can do stuff like that too on the nutrition side. It's not as immediately apparent, but having things like the scanner, having products with color like this, there are things that we can do to help people to understand the importance of what it is that we put into our bodies and how we can measure a change. So there we go. I hope that helps you to understand nutrition and antioxidants. And really, we have really come to a state of the art with our products like LifePak and LifePak Plus that combines nutrition and antioxidants. So now we're starting to see more and more publications in the last decade in the area of, can you see that? Nutrients and gene expression. Or, science about, of course, we've talked about phytonutrients, right? And how important they are. These are the phytochemicals from plants. But with an emphasis now on what that's doing with your genetics. So here's one on two new words, nutrigenetics, nutrigenomics. Here's another one on this whole new science of epigenetics, right? And nutrients. And what people are starting to ask this question of, can these things that we're eating affect our genes? First, I need to do some clarification here. Before we put another circle here, let's understand a little bit more about the genes genetics, nutrigenomics, gene expression, what that all means. So when you think of genetics, you probably think of chromosomes, right? You think of these guys, right? It kind of looks like that, like a Y or like an X. How many chromosomes do we have? Quick test. 23, right? So there are 23 chromosomes. What is the chromosome? Well, it's inside the cell, right? You have the nucleus, and then you've got all these chromosomes in here. It's basically the packing structure of the DNA. So if you unravel it, if you unravel the chromosome, you get this long strand of a double helix. Can you see that okay? That's the DNA. Well, so DNA and how well we age and how healthy we are. When we eat something, does it change our DNA? Actually, no. Your DNA is fixed for life. It doesn't change. It's a genetic code, right? It doesn't change. You've had the same DNA code since you were born. So what does change? Well, there are 25,000 genes. So basically, what the DNA is it's kind of like a recipe book with 25,000 recipes to build and maintain the human body. And how does it work? You have a switch at the front of the DNA, and that determines how many copies of that DNA are made. That will lead to a gene product. Are you with me? So it's kind of like a restaurant. You know, which page do I open to in the recipe book, and how much of that recipe do I make? And there's all sorts of demands on your body, and it will change from day to day, from month to month, depending upon your lifestyle or your stress levels or all those things. Your body reacts to that, and you can then sort of change the level of the recipes and which recipes are being made. That part is called gene expression, that part between the DNA and what it's producing, or the work output of the DNA. So it can be measured. There's new technology now. This is the gene chip right here. In this gene chip, you can get a sample of your cheek. You can do a cheek swab, or a sample of any tissue, extract the gene product, which is the messenger RNA that leads to a product, and then tell for all 25,000 genes how much is being made. Is the level high? Is the level low? Then you can come up with sort of a heat map that shows you, this one compares before taking a certain food and after. And red means high expression and blue means low expression in this example. So we have an amazing ability now. We're sort of at the same level that we were with the scanner measuring carotenoids, only now we have amazing technology to measure gene expression changes. And that gives us the opportunity now to look at our diet and ask questions like, what is more healthy for you, a pomegranate or a banana, right? And we know that there are active components inside there like carotenoids and flavonoids and all sorts of things. And it turns out they're biologically active, sort of going way back to my introduction of myself and why I was interested in natural plant compounds. So we have now reached this age of technology that is just enabling us to answer some of these questions. So we have now paired up with some amazing scientists. I have a book right here. I don't know if you can read that. The Retardation of Aging and Disease by Dietary Restriction by Richard Weinrich, right? He's a famous scientist who has looked at the nutritional approaches to help us be more healthy. And he's paired up with another scientist called Thomas Proler, a cancer geneticist, who introduced him to this gene chip technology and said, let's look at the difference between old and young and their gene expression patterns. Let's try to find out how to influence those gene expression patterns with our diet. And so that's when we paired up with them, Nuskin and Richard Weinrich and Thomas Proler, in their company called LifeGen Technologies, and really just cracked open this whole area of science and nutrigenomics. And we applied some really interesting science to this. We looked at skin gene expression, but one of the first things that we tried in the area of nutrition was in understanding bioenergetics, or why it is that as you get older you seem to lose your energy levels. And this is very well understood biochemically and physiologically. There is a part of the cell called the mitochondrion that produces energy, basically, again, combining fuel with oxygen to create this reaction, this electron transport chain where oxygen is consumed and energy is produced in the form of ATP. And we know that as you get older, that the efficiency of those mitochondria seems to decline. Kind of like an old car, right? Starts to blow a bit of smoke, starts to lose power. That's what the mitochondria are like. Now, we screened about 50 different plant-based molecules to see which would affect the gene expression patterns associated with healthy mitochondria. And we actually found about 52 genes that are affected as we age, and we found a number of substances that affect the mitochondria in a very positive way. Makes them seem younger, makes them behave younger. One was this little guy right here. Can you see that? Anyone know what that is? This is something that has been sort of a part of the Chinese sort of vocabulary for many, many years. This is a picture of it, called Cordyceps sinensis. I have one of the little guys right here. And if you look very closely, it looks like a mushroom that is growing out of the head of a caterpillar, because that's exactly what it is. We found that this particular substance really woke up the gene expression associated with mitochondria. This is kind of a cool discovery because we're talking about something that the Chinese have been using for centuries for vitality, and we found a new science that confirmed maybe what it's doing for the body at the genetic level. So rather than make people eat these disgusting caterpillars, we actually, of course, produce it in encapsulated form without the caterpillar, sans caterpillar, right? So this is a product that is basically fermented. We've got the mushroom now. We've isolated the exact strain of that mushroom and fermented it, right? And basically then turn it into a powder that is a lot more, I guess someone will take care of all that powder on my carpet here, a lot more palatable, shall we say. So this is amazing because we're now using the best of modern science to validate some pretty ancient stuff here. But we've used that same approach in many different things, including the area of weight management and other areas that will be launched in Europe sometime soon. So I hope that gives you a bit of a background of where we are. So I'm going to draw that last circle in here now. And I'm going to put gene expression. So we have now sort of three areas: nutrition, antioxidant science, and the science of gene expression that really help us to understand the way that we age a lot better. This is the paradigm that we're using right now. We feel that if you're not sort of having at least a modicum of understanding and science applied to all three of these areas, that it's not going to be feasible for you to really approach the healthy aging paradigm with nearly the rigor that we need to. So this is my attempt at giving you some background at the science that we have here at Nu Skin, some of the products that have been developed as a result of that science, and here's to your health and everything that you do that will make you and your children and your parents' lives more healthy so that you can age well and die young as late in life as possible.